The guilt hit me hard the next morning. I sat in my kitchen staring at my coffee, feeling like a stranger in my own skin. Every sound in the house felt sharper: the hum of the fridge, the distant bark of a dog, the tick of the clock. I kept thinking about the way his hands had felt, the heat of his breath, the way I had let it happen. My body still hummed from the memory, but my mind screamed at me for what I had done. Mark came home that evening, tired from his trip, dropping his bags by the door and kissing my cheek absent-mindedly like he always did. I felt myself flinch at the touch. I wanted to confess, to get it all off my chest, but the words stayed trapped in my throat. I watched him move around the house like nothing had changed, and the weight of the secret settled into my bones. Every glance felt forced, every conversation stiff. Tom didn't come by that week. I thought maybe he was avoiding me, or maybe I was avoiding him. Either way, the silence between our houses felt louder than ever. I'd catch myself looking out the window, hoping for a glimpse, but when I did see him, we barely exchanged nods. It was like we had both agreed, without speaking, to pretend it never happened. But it did happen, and it wasn't going away. At night, I lay awake next to Mark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he could feel the difference in me. I started noticing things I hadn't before: how his breathing evened out when he fell asleep, the way he muttered in his dreams. He was so close, but it felt like we were living on different planets. I hated myself for what I'd done, but I couldn't stop replaying the memory. One afternoon, Tom finally caught me outside. He looked tired, older somehow. We exchanged a few words, but it was tense, awkward. He said we shouldn't have let it happen. I nodded, agreeing, but I didn't feel relieved. I felt hollow. We stood there, both of us knowing we couldn't go back to how things were. I wanted to ask him if he thought about it too, if he regretted it, but I didn't. I just walked away, the words stuck in my throat. I started pulling away from Mark more and more. I stopped trying to initiate conversations, stopped caring if he noticed. It wasn't about Tom anymore, it was about me realizing how lonely I had become. I didn't know if I wanted to confess or just disappear. The guilt sat heavy on my chest, but part of me knew that moment with Tom wasn't an accident. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that something inside me was screaming for more. Even if it came at the cost of everything else, I didn't know what to do next. I still don't. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the look on his face, the way the water clung to his skin. It haunted me in a way I didn't want to admit. I told myself it was just a harmless accident, that I was overreacting, but every time I saw him afterward, whether it was a simple wave from across the yard or when he passed me in the driveway, my pulse would spike. I avoided him at first, feeling embarrassed, but part of me wanted to see him. One afternoon, I found myself standing by the kitchen window, staring at his house. It had been raining and everything outside glistened. My stomach tightened when I saw him step out onto his porch, stretching like he'd just woken up from a long nap. I don't even know what I was thinking, but before I could talk myself out of it, I was walking over there. I told myself I needed to return a dish he had lent me, but I knew that was a lie. He opened the door, and for a second we just stood there, like we were both waiting for the other to speak. I handed him the dish, and our fingers brushed. That's all it took. I felt the air shift between us, and the next thing I knew, he was inviting me inside. I stepped in without hesitation. It was quiet, almost too quiet. We sat down and I could feel the tension crackling in the space between us. I tried to make small talk, but it felt forced, like we were both pretending nothing had happened. He poured us each a glass of wine, and I sipped too quickly, feeling the warmth rush to my cheeks. We talked about everything and nothing: his late wife, my marriage, how lonely it could get sometimes. I didn't realize how much I'd been holding in until it all started spilling out. How Mark barely noticed me anymore. How I felt like I was fading into the background of my own life. Tom listened, really listened, in a way that felt almost dangerous. And then it happened. He reached out, brushing my cheek with the back of his hand, and I didn't pull away. I felt like I was outside of myself, watching as I leaned into his touch, as his lips met mine, soft at first, then with a hunger that made my heart race. I should have stopped it, but I didn't. My hands moved to his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin, and the rest of the world fell away. Afterward, we sat in stunned silence, both of us catching our breath, not looking at each other. I felt a wave of guilt, so strong I thought I might throw up, but mixed in with it was this strange electric thrill I couldn't ignore. I had crossed a line and there was no going back. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. My husband was, I was home alone when the water heater decided to break down. I panicked at first, unsure what to do, until I remembered Tom mentioning once that he used to do some plumbing work in his younger days. I felt a little embarrassed asking for his help, but when I called him, he sounded so warm and reassuring that I caved. He said he'd be over in a bit. I opened the door to find him holding a small toolbox, wearing an old t-shirt that clung slightly to his chest, and it caught me off guard how good he looked for his age. I brushed the thought away as he stepped inside, thanking him profusely. He got to work quickly, focused, confident, moving with a quiet efficiency. I tried not to stare, but I couldn't help watching the way his forearms flexed as he worked, the way he wiped a bead of sweat from his temple. When he finished, he turned to me with a small, satisfied smile and said it was all fixed. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Just as I was about to offer him a drink, the weather shifted. Sudden, heavy rain pounding against the windows. We both laughed at the timing, and I felt this odd sense of intimacy, like we were in on some private joke. I told him he was soaked and should dry off before heading back out. Without really thinking, I pointed toward the bathroom, offering him a towel. He hesitated for a second, but then nodded. I tried to busy myself in the kitchen, but when I passed by the bathroom, the door was ajar and I caught a glimpse, just a flash of his bare back, water dripping down his skin. My breath hitched, and for a second I couldn't look away. I should have walked on, but instead I stood there, heart racing until he turned and our eyes locked. Neither of us said a word. The silence was deafening. I felt my face flush, a sharp pulse of heat running through me. I opened my mouth to apologize, but the words caught in my throat. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable, his body still damp, a towel draped around his waist. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. I finally managed to stammer something about needing to get back to work and hurried off. But my hands were trembling, my heart wouldn't slow down. Every sound seemed louder, the rain against the windows, the clock ticking on the wall. I tried to pretend nothing had happened, that it was just an awkward moment, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something I couldn't take back, and I knew in my gut this wasn't the end of it.